Life is tricky, isn't it? By the time we figure it out, we've already spent probably, most of our young life following the orders of others. But many times the models that we're given are incorrect and other times totally false, just totally false. So let's take the Western model at the moment, same model I grew up with. You kind of gain consciousness, those islands of consciousness, as Dr. Young calls them, when you're young, 2, 3, 5, whatever it is, and you go to grade 1. I remember actually going to grade 1, a total autocracy. You entered the classroom, you stood there, we sang God Save the Queen, we still had the Queen. The teacher inspected your nails to make sure they were clean. Then you sat down and no one spoke. No one. There wasn't an aspect of let's make some noise. No one spoke at all. A little bit later in grades 2 or 3, you got a little bit louder, more vociferous maybe, and then they beat you to ensure that you didn't talk. So in the end, nobody talked. So this is the model, obedience. You go through elementary school, then into junior high and high school. And you still don't know very much because you're really not quite awake, are you? And then you graduate. Now, when I was young, of course, most people didn't finish high school. They quit and they went working in the woods or fishing. Money was just stupid. There was so much money in the economy. And a very rational question came forward. Why continue to be in school when you can make a fortune just working with your muscles? And then if you really were good, you could get some ticket, as it was called. You could get some license to be a plumber or an electrician or what have we. Why go to school? So that was the model. And of course, those people had full employment for the next 10 or 15 years, and then the economy changed. The jobs were exported to China, Bangladesh, anywhere there was cheap labor. And suddenly you're working in maybe a construction job if you're lucky, but probably not, probably Costco or some department store, whatever it is. And you're making money, but nowhere near the kind of money you made before. And along comes, of course, Mr. Trump, and he tells you, I'm going to make America great again. And your mind is pulled back to when you were 16 years old. So, of course, you vote for the man. I'd vote for him too, for sure. But this is not the reality of today. Today, the model is you go to high school, finish that, then you go to university. And you will finish this university. Now, in North America, only about half, 60% finish university. I've read statistics that are higher and lower this, but that seems to be the average. About 60% finish in 6 years. And then they get out and they get a job. And of course, a job in the historical model is going to eventually give you a house, and the house is going to attract a woman, and then you're going to have marriage and children, and going to ride off into the sunset, right? But that model is now totally fraught with complications because houses are, there's 30 years income, something ridiculous. And when I was discussing 16 and leaving school, they were 1.5 times income. So you can see that we need 30 times more money, basically, or so, to try and pull off a similar lifestyle. So the model is in trouble, but we still have the model of economic superiority. Money is going to dominate my life. But this is no longer the case because quite obviously there are a number of trillionaires on this planet, And very few of us are going to be trillionaires, are we? Billionaires. We're not going to be billionaires. We're going to be wage slaves. And there are more people today than ever before that are thoughtful, and they realize that in this consciousness, whatever your religious affiliation, in this consciousness, you have reality once. And it's a pretty precious reality because it's mine. I exist in my own head, basically, and I don't want to live out a punishing life. So what's my solution? Have no relationships, cut the cost, have no marriage, have no children. But this is producing, of course, the effects of profound loneliness. This is the loneliest generation because they can't bond with people. So models are foolish. But for sure, one thing is true. Life is ascendant. It gets better as we age, if we want. If we maintain our health, and because we've been to a good school, we learn how to learn, we're excited about the life that we lead. Yes, we are. And maybe we do have to make certain sacrifices along the way. Yes, this is part of life as well, whatever that may be. But we can, in this ascended life, be happy. I mean, this is the ultimate goal of life, isn't it? To go along and really enjoy the journey. Really enjoy it, because it is a habit. Happiness is a habit. We have to learn it. We have to practice it. We need a routine. Make your bed, etc., etc. So the next time you really get distressed with your life model when things seem to be spiraling out of control, just think to yourself that I'm going to figure this out. Oscar Wilde. It will all be fine in the end. And if it's not fine, it's not the end. Well, his life was never fine, but this was repeated by John Lennon. And John Lennon's life, even though it was cut tragically short, was still on a roll, and he contributed a lot of good thoughts. Certainly his music on the concept of nonviolence and love. He's left us with a legacy. So life is ascendant. It will just get better and better if you want. But you got to work on it. And I know you will. So, you know what they say. You know what they say. Critical thinking is everything, especially if you're going to build an ascendant life and have some excitement. And critical thinking is great. Truly great. You take care. God bless. Bye-bye. Hello, Leon here. This is our 32nd day of our Camino journey. This morning was rather cool, but then slowly but surely became rather warm, but it's not as warm as before. And the wind has been quite strong. It was a nice day. It is July 23rd. So today we'd like to talk about, because we are approaching the end of this phase of our Camino journey. We're going to be in Santiago in tomorrow, actually, in the evening. So today we thought we would discuss life itself. And I think if you think of the way of St. James, the Camino, you are struck by your own life, and you have to sit back and ask, what has my life been about? And I think one reflects and you remember the good parts of life and in turn the bad parts of life. And I'm a big believer in no regrets. You only have to plan for today and the future, and you have to take lessons, of course, from the past. But the past has no value unless I bring it to the present and give it strength, give it force, hence the victim mentality. But if you think back in your life, the good and the bad, when you're on the El Camino journey, when you're on the Camino, you sit back and you say to yourself, life has actually been not bad. I haven't quite finished my mission, but it is progressing in a very positive way. And I think this is an important concept for every person because life is extremely difficult, in my estimation. When we're born and we finally gain consciousness at around 20 years of age or so, we quickly realize that it's going to be a struggle. And those that don't think it's a struggle probably later in life will greatly suffer the midlife crisis that comes to many thoughtless people, if you will. But we don't have to be one of those, do we? We can sit back and analyze life after 20 years of age and say to ourselves, wait a moment, what's the plan? Which we've discussed before, haven't we? What's the plan? What am I going to do with my piece of life? So if you think to yourself that life is very, very, very long, it's not a short life. So when you do make your errors, when you do make them, you're able to correct them. The only thing that will stop you in this mission is the end of this life, of course. And the body will carry you. At 69 years old, my old body is still thumping on. And I've proven this to myself in the last 770 kilometers or so. And it gets sore and the toes hurt, the blisters come, the bones ache. But the will to go on is there, right? And I think this is the essential thing of life. You must have a will to go on. I will complete my mission, no matter what happens in this life, whatever tragedy or whatever good event happens, but I will still go on. Some thoughts from David.
Something that I've seen a lot with people that I know around my age in their 30s is they seem to be a shell of who they were just a few years earlier whilst in university or finishing up. And for the longest time, I wasn't sure why. And I got to thinking about this, and I think I figured out the answer. That when you're younger, when you're young as a child, you're excited about anything and everything, and you're curious about things. I saw this with my kindergarten students. I used to teach science to them once a week, and even the smallest things I'd show them, such as blowing up balloons and then rubbing it across their heads to create static electricity, the children were amazed by such simple things. And then you get into high school, you learn to drive a car, have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You go off to university and you have a lot more independence than previously. Perhaps you fall in love and enter into a serious relationship. A few years later, you start your job and you get married. But after you hit 30, you finish up a lot of these milestones. You might have a child or two, and then your focus in life changes to this. And I think that the problem that we have is once we get older, we lose ourselves. We don't get to experience more things. We choose not to. We instead opt for the safety of what we know. And the safety of what we know, whilst it is safe, it is also boring. So let's look at Leon, for example. He's a few years older than myself, but here he is walking with me. Neither of us were walkers before we took this trip, and he's walking the El Camino. And we're already discussing what our next adventure is going to be. I think that people who continue to try new things and do new things, myself, for instance, I learned today about the real paella is made with rabbit meat. And I've never eaten rabbit in my life, but I'm curious to try it now. And I would try it if I had the opportunity. So we need these kinds of experiences to keep our lives interesting and exciting so that we don't end up in the slumps that so many people do. Remember, life is ascendant.
So, to take off from David's point, life is ascendant. This is very true. It is a very, very, very long life. And that works two ways, doesn't it? If it's a horrible life, it's maybe too long. And if it's a magnificent life, many people say it's too short. But either way, it's a very long life, in my estimation. And I think we have to sit back and we have to say, of course, why am I here? What is my mission? And what am I going to do with my piece of life? And I think the Camino allows a person over the last 32 days or so, allows a person to sit back and say to themselves, wow, let's think about this piece of life that I have. And all of us can do this, and all of us should do this because we are filled with memories, both good and bad. But as David has just said, life is ascendant. It goes on in its magnificence until the last moment of consciousness. Keep your imagination, keep your dreams. So you take care. God bless. Bye bye.
Bye bye.